afternoon to all. My name is Reynold D. Lavestida, and we are going to tackle about quantitative research design. Before of that, let us define what is quantitative and what is research design. Intended learning outcomes. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to first, widen your vocabulary in English. Second, exchange ideas with one another using the newly learned words. Third, explain the meaning of quantitative research design. Fourth, compare and contrast the type of quantitative research design. Fifth, classify the type of quantitative research design. Sixth, outline the experimental research design stages. 7. Present a graphical look of the experimental research design stages. And 8. Lastly, judge the quality of finished quantitative research design. Quantitative research design. There's a lot of things that you want to do in life. You want to be a dance lister, to be in other part of the world, to be a millionaire, to be a renowned scientist, engineer, surgeon, and so forth. To realize 1, 2, or 3 of these things you want to happen in your life. First, envisage any of these in your mind, then have a vision of what to do and how to do such thing. Doing this saying in your mind, the order or arrangement of things involved in the activity you wanted to perform. This is an act of designing whether a plan or an outline of your activities is conceived in your mind. It is the design that takes a certain shape the moment you use symbols to lay its structure or component on a piece of paper. In any of research type, much more in quantitative research, where do you a great deal of abstraction and scientific or logical thinking, a research design is a parcel of your study, by which means of research design you are able to make this. There are 3 common quantitative research design: the descriptive, correctional, experimental research. First, descriptive research design. Descriptive research design is the type of research design that aims you to systematically gathering information to describe a phenomenon, situation, or population. Systematically gathering information without manipulating any variables. In other words, there's on the research part only data gathering. For example, if you were studying the prevalence of smartphone addiction among adolescents in your community, you could conduct a survey to a sample of teens, asking them to rate their agreement with certain statements to relate to smartphone addiction. The collected data would provide insight regarding how widespread the situation may be. Second, correlational research. A correlational research design is investigate relationship between 2 variables or more, without the researcher controlling or manipulating any of them. This research design is useful when you want to know whether a change in one thing tends to be accompanied by a change in other things. For example, if you wanted to explore the relationship between exercise frequency and overall health, you could use a correlational design to help you to achieve this. In this case, you might gather data on the participants' habit along with records of their health indicators such as blood pressure, heartbeat, or body mass index. Third, experimental research. Experimental research design is a quantitative research design that bases its examination of a thing under a manipulated or controlled environment is done to determine the validity or truthfulness of such thing. Experimental research design is used to determine if there's a causal relationship between variables. With this type of research, you as a researcher manipulate one variable, the independent variable, while controlling others is the independent variable. What is independent variable? An independent variable is the variable you manipulate or vary in an experimental study to explore its effects. It's called independent because it's not influenced by any other variables in the study. What is dependent variable? A dependent variable is the variable that changes as a result of the independent variable manipulation. It is the outcome you're interested in measuring and it depends on your independent variable. Example: independent variable. Type of treatment. Dependent variable, blood pressure. Independent variable, level 1, low dose of the new medication. Dependent variable, no change in blood pressure. Independent variable, high dose of the medication. Dependent variable, blood pressure is lowered. Independent variable, level 3, placebo. Dependent variable, no change in blood pressure. Independent variable, apply difference level, while dependent variable measures the effects. Example of experimental research design. If you wanted to measure how different types of fertilizer affects plants' growth, you could set several groups of plants. With each group, receive a different type of fertilizer as well as no fertilizer. You then measure how each plant group grow on average over time and compare the result from the different groups to see which fertilizer was effective. Naturally, experimental research design provides researchers with powerful way to identify causal relationship and measure relationship. Experimental research design stages. The true experimental and quasi-experimental design follow the same stages. In designing their different lays only in the participant selection process. In that the first is randomized, the second is purposive. First, clear knowledge of the research objectives that enable you to decide not only on the kind of research you have to do, but also on the manner you have to follow in conducting the research. Second, quasi-experimental. The term quasi, pronounced as quasi, means partially, pseudo, or almost. The non-adherence this research design to random selection of participants is the reason it got the name quasi-experimental. Research, which means a research with the capability to yield findings that are similarly or more or less true. Prone to bias caused by your purposive rather than random selection of participants. Quasi-experimental design is incapable of establishing cause and effect relationships. Type of quasi-experimental. First, match comparison group design. In this quasi-experimental design, instead of selecting participants for the control group, you get a set of participants that shows close similarities with the experimental or treatment group based on one or more important variables. Second, time series quasi-experimental design. You act of controlling the variables in this case is through multiple observation of the subject before and after the treatment or condition applied to the experimental group. The purpose of several observations is to see the connection between the pre-test and the post-test based on taking place of the treatment or condition. Counterbalance quasi-experimental design. Here, control is applied to one group to examine the effect of all treatment and condition to control variables. For instance, negative results coming from 3-time observation are counterbalanced or given weight that is equated with positive result from 4 or 5-time observation. Next, single subject quasi-experimental design. This design is used when the population is so large that you find difficulty in choosing a group to study, so you decided to apply the condition or treatment to a single subject like a class of learners that later find out the effect of the treatment on the entire classes. Experimental research design stages. The true experimental and quasi-experimental design follow the same stages, and designing their different lays only in the participant selection process. In that the first is randomized, the second is purposive. First, clear knowledge of the research objectives that enable you to decide not only on the kind of research you have to do, but also on the manner you have to follow in conducting the research. Second, formulation of hypothesis. To state your quizzes of what may not be true, null hypothesis, or may be true, alternative hypothesis about the result. Third, method of testing your hypothesis or of examining their validity, like deciding whether you have to follow the experimental design or the quasi-experimental design. Fourth, choice of which instrument to use in collecting data. That is whether to use interview, observation, or questionnaire. Fifth, process of selecting the subject to compose the control group and the experimental group. 6. Perform of experimentation that allows control of the cropping up of internus variables and of the experimenter's biases. Lastly, collection of analysis of data. Non-experimental research system is a quantitative research system that is capable of giving qualitative and quantitative data, but more on qualitative data, and this is often used in the field of social science. Unlike the experimental design that allows manipulation or control of some aspect of the research, non-experimental research design becomes controlling variables. Instead, it is involves variables the way they naturally exist on Earth. Two types of following are the types of non-experimental research design. First, descriptive. Descriptive depicts an image or a picture of an individual or a group. Second, comparative. States the difference or similarities between or among people